At this point, we have something that's called excommunication. It's called church discipline. You are no longer, and this would happen in front of the entire congregation, so everybody knows, this man is no longer a Christian. It's not that they're not LCMS. They are not a Christian. They are not saved. If they do not repent, they are going to hell. That is how serious this is. This person is outside of the faith entirely. They are an unbeliever. Start thinking about 1 Corinthians 7:15 again. It says, when the unbelieving spouse departs, when the unbelieving spouse abandons. If even then, even after being rebuked and declared an unbeliever, they refuse to make their house habitable for their wife, they have abandoned somebody just as much as if their wife was trying to come into the house and they lock the door. I'm not abandoning you. I'm right here. Why can't you get in? The door is locked. You're abandoning them because you're not allowing them to be in the house in a situation where they're not going to be constantly sinned against and they're not going to be in danger. At such point, I would say, and God correct me if I'm wrong, I would say that the unbelieving spouse has abandoned the believing brother or sister. And 1 Corinthians 7:15 applies. The believing brother and sister is not the one who sought divorce. The believing brother or sister is acknowledging that they have been abandoned, they have been effectively divorced by their unbelieving spouse, and they are merely acknowledging it legally. That's why we can have Jesus saying that the only cause for Christians to seek divorce is sexual immorality. And when people are abused in such a way that they cannot live with their spouse, it is still lawful for them to be, one, separated from their spouse for their safety, and then two, eventually for them to be the one that legally files divorce, because it is the sin of the unbeliever that is causing the divorce. The believer is merely recognizing the rift, the ripping up of the marriage certificate that the unbeliever has already done. So in such a case, yes, there is one cause for Christians to seek divorce, and only one cause according to Matthew 19, verse 9. But yes, also, those Christians who have had to file for divorce because of the abuse or because of the abandonment, because of the unlivable situation that they've been placed in by their unbelieving spouse, because of that, that Christian is then, again, according to 1 Corinthians 7:15, that Christian is free. Free not just from marriage, but also free to marry again. So biblically, this is the case that I would say that it is possible for somebody to be divorced for a legitimate reason and to marry again. And if you want, because there's some people who say, well, you have to stay single your entire life. That's nonsense. In the Bible, there's plenty of passages that talk about the widows, if it's possible for a widow to remarry after her husband dies, and they should do it. There's plenty of passages that talk about not being alone and stuff like that. So God does not require that because you've been abandoned by your spouse that you have to stay alone forever. God actually wants marriage. Marriage is actually a good thing, even if this sinner, an unbeliever, has thrown it away and destroyed it. So with that, hopefully, again, you'll see if we stopped before we got to 1 Corinthians 7:15, this sounds a lot like God is saying, well, you got to live with an abusive spouse, and that's not what God is saying.